Let me tell you a secret about silence. It's not peace, it's anesthesia. When an avoidant walks away, the world thinks they're fine. They look steady, even relieved. They smile, they laugh, they keep moving. But what you're seeing isn't strength. It's a mask. A mask built from years of running from feelings too heavy to carry. They don't collapse in the moment. They don't beg, they don't chase, they don't cry. They convince themselves they made the right choice. They tell themselves they needed freedom, clarity, control. And for a while they believe it. They fill their days with noise. Work deadlines, gym sessions, long drives, endless scrolling, new hobbies, new people. Anything that keeps the mind busy. Anything that keeps the heart quiet. Distraction becomes their drug. They lean into it like oxygen because silence terrifies them. Silence is where the truth lives. And truth is the one thing they've spent their whole life avoiding. On the outside they look calm. On the inside they're disconnected. That's the trick of avoidance. It doesn't feel like pain at first. Feels like nothing. And nothing is easier to carry than heartbreak. So they wear it like armor. They walk through life pretending the absence doesn't matter. Pretending the person they lost was just another chapter. Pretending they're free. But numbness has an expiration date. It doesn't last forever. It cracks. It cracks in the quiet moments. When the phone stops buzzing. When the music fades. When the room grows still. That's when the calm starts to feel thin, fragile, breakable. That's when the silence they once trusted starts echoing. And every echo carries your name. They don't show it. They won't admit it. But the calm you see is borrowed time. It's not healing. It's hiding. It's the oldest trick in their book. Disconnect first, feel later. And later always comes. Later arrives in the middle of the night when sleep won't stick. Later arrives in the pause between conversations when their mind drifts back to you. Later arrives when they realize the freedom they chased feels empty without someone who understood them. This is the first stage of their pain. The false calm. The counterfeit peace. The quiet before the storm. It fools everyone, even themselves. But underneath, the truth waits. The truth that they didn't just lose someone. They lost the one person who saw past the mask. And no amount of distraction can erase that. So if you ever wonder why avoidants look fine at first, remember this. Calm isn't the end of their story. It's the beginning of their unraveling. Because silence doesn't heal them. Silence exposes them. And when the mask finally cracks, they're forced to face the one thing they fear most. The weight of what they pushed away. It's never the big things that break them, it's the small ones. An avoidant can walk through life looking untouched, carrying themselves like nothing ever happened. They convince themselves they're fine, that the choice they made was the right one. But pain doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It sneaks in quietly, through the smallest cracks. A song plays in the background, one you both loved. A familiar scent drifts past, the one that clung to your clothes. A place they swore they'd forgotten suddenly feels alive with memory. And in that instant, the calm they've been clinging to collapses. It doesn't look dramatic. No tears, no breakdown, no visible storm. But inside something shifts. That tiny reminder becomes a doorway they can't close. It drags them back to the comfort they buried, the ease they pretended not to need, the softness they once rejected. They don't know how to process it because for them, closeness always felt dangerous. Yet now the absence of it feels worse. This is the moment their numbness starts to fail. The distraction that kept them safe suddenly feels hollow. The gym session doesn't silence the thought. The long drive doesn't erase the memory. The laughter with friends doesn't drown out the echo. Because the trigger isn't about the object. It's about what the object represents. It's about you. The person who made them feel seen without demanding they change. The person who gave them safety without asking for perfection. Avoidants fear vulnerability more than loss. But when these small reminders hit, vulnerability sneaks in through the back door. They feel disrupted, unsettled, exposed. They realize the calm they trusted was only a pause, not a cure. And now the pause is over. They won't admit it. They won't say your name. They won't confess the ache. But the silence inside them grows louder. Every reminder becomes proof of what they tried to deny. Proof that connection mattered. Proof that your presence wasn't pressure, it was relief. Proof that the space they demanded feels emptier than they imagined. This stage doesn't destroy them in one blow. It chips away slowly. Each trigger adds weight. Each memory adds depth. Each echo adds truth. And the truth is simple: they didn't just lose someone. They lost the one person who gave them a kind of ease they can't replicate. So when you wonder if they ever feel it, remember this. Avoidants don't break in the moment you leave. They break in the moment something small reminds them of what they pushed away. And that tiny reminder becomes the first crack in the wall they built to survive. Avoidants don't cry in public. They vanish in private. This is the stage where the mask begins to slip. They don't rage, they don't plead, they don't show the world their pain. Instead, they retreat. They start pulling away from the very life they built to prove they were fine. The hobbies that once kept them busy suddenly feel meaningless. The conversations that once distracted them now feel heavy. Even the laughter they used to fake begins to sound hollow. It's not that they want to isolate. It's that their emotions finally catch up. The numbness that shielded them starts dissolving, and underneath it is a weight they can't carry in front of others. So they disappear. They cancel plans. They avoid calls. They shrink from anything that might expose the truth. The truth that they're not okay. Inside, the collapse is slow but relentless. It doesn't hit like a storm, it erodes like water against stone. Every day, a little more of their strength crumbles. They stop showing up fully. They stop engaging. They stop pretending. And in the silence, a thought begins to form. A thought they can't escape. I didn't just lose someone. I lost the person who understood me. That realization doesn't break them in one moment. It breaks them in fragments. A slow crumble they hide from the world. They don't want anyone to see it because vulnerability terrifies them. Vulnerability feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. So they keep the collapse private. They let the world believe they're fine while inside they're unraveling. The withdrawal becomes their language of pain. They don't scream, they don't confess, they don't explain. They vanish. They fade from the spaces they once occupied. They stop chasing joy because joy reminds them of what they lost. They stop chasing connection because connection reminds them of what they pushed away. And the silence grows louder. Louder than any words they could speak. Louder than any mask they could wear. It's in that silence that the collapse becomes undeniable. They realize the calm they trusted was never real. It was only a delay. And now the delay is over. This stage is invisible to most. Friends see distance, not despair. Family sees quiet, not collapse. But inside, the avoidant is breaking. Not in a way the world can witness, but in a way they can't escape. The collapse is theirs alone. And it's the first time they're forced to face the truth without distraction. Because when the numbness fades, what remains isn't freedom. It's loss. And loss, for an avoidant, is the one thing they never learned how to carry. Regret doesn't scream, it whispers on repeat. This is the stage where the avoidant mind becomes a theater of echoes. They don't cry, they don't confess, they don't show the world what's happening. Instead, they replay. Over and over. Every conversation, every silence, every moment where closeness was offered and distance was chosen. They revisit the times you asked for clarity and they shut down. They revisit the nights you reached out and they pulled away. They revisit the patience you gave, the softness you carried, the effort you poured in. And each replay cuts deeper than the last. It's not nostalgia. It's not longing. It's punishment. Their own memory becomes the weapon. Because in those replays they finally see what they couldn't see before. They see that your presence wasn't pressure, it was safety. They see that your attempts weren't demands, they were bridges. They see that their silence wasn't protection, it was destruction. And that realization doesn't fade. It lingers. It grows. It spreads into every corner of their mind. The avoidant doesn't process pain in explosions. They process it in loops. They think, they analyze, they dissect. They replay the moment you walked away not once but 100 times. They replay the words they didn't say, the apologies they never gave, the affection they withheld. And with each cycle, regret settles deeper. It becomes a shadow that follows them everywhere. They don't talk about it. They don't admit it. But the replay stage is relentless. It shows them the cost of their choices without mercy. It reminds them that the distance they clung to wasn't freedom, it was loss. It reminds them that the walls they built didn't keep them safe, they kept them alone. Every trigger feeds the replay. A song brings back a conversation. A place brings back a memory. A joke brings back laughter they'll never hear again. And suddenly they're trapped in a loop they can't escape. The more they try to distract themselves, the louder the replay becomes. The more they try to move forward, the more the past drags them back. This stage is quiet but brutal. It doesn't break them in one moment, it wears them down slowly. It makes them realize that the person they pushed away wasn't just anyone. It was the one who saw them, the one who understood them, the one who gave them something rare. And now that rarity is gone. The replay stage is the turning point. It's where regret stops being abstract and becomes undeniable. It's where the avoidant finally understands that their silence cost them more than they imagined. And once that truth takes root, it never lets go. They try to replace you, but every new face feels shallow. This is the stage where the avoidant believes moving on will save them. They chase novelty. They dive into new conversations, new bodies, new attention. They convince themselves that someone else can fill the space you left. But every attempt backfires. Because what they're really searching for isn't a person, it's the feeling they lost. At first they tell themselves it's working. They laugh, they flirt, they share moments. But underneath, the emptiness doesn't shrink. It grows. Every new connection feels temporary, surface level, fragile. They notice the difference without meaning to. The way others don't understand their pauses. The way no one else feels safe enough to sit in their silence. The way every interaction lacks the warmth they once dismissed. Comparison becomes their shadow. They don't want to compare, but they can't stop. Every smile reminds them of yours. Every conversation reminds them of what they no longer have. Every attempt at closeness reminds them of the ease they once rejected. And the more they compare, the more they realize the truth. They had something rare and they weren't ready for it. This realization cuts deeper than loneliness. Loneliness is empty. This pain is sharp. Because now it carries meaning. It tells them they didn't just lose someone, they lost the one person who gave them a kind of connection they can't replicate. They thought freedom would feel light. Instead it feels heavy. Heavy with regret, heavy with longing, heavy with the awareness that they traded depth for distance. They keep searching. They keep trying. They keep hoping the next person will erase the ache. But the ache doesn't fade. It lingers in every interaction. It whispers in every moment of closeness. It reminds them that safety isn't easy to find, and they already had it once. The avoidant doesn't admit this out loud. They won't say your name. They won't confess the comparisons. But inside, the truth grows louder. They know the new faces don't measure up. They know the new energy doesn't reach the same depth. They know the new conversations don't carry the same warmth. And that knowledge becomes a weight they can't escape. This stage is brutal because it exposes them to reality. Reality that connection isn't replaceable. Reality that safety isn't common. Reality that the person they pushed away wasn't just another chapter. They were the rare presence that made them feel seen. And now, every attempt to move forward only drags them back. Because comparison isn't a choice. It's a consequence. And for the avoidant, it's the moment they realize the emptiness they're running from has a name. Yours. When they finally reach out, it's not about you, it's about their silence. This is the stage where the avoidant can't carry the weight of emptiness anymore. They've tried distractions. They've tried comparisons. They've tried convincing themselves they're fine. But silence has a way of growing louder. It presses against them in the quiet moments, reminding them of everything they lost. And eventually they break the pattern. They send a message. Simple words. Casual tone. Hey, how have you been? But behind those words is a storm. It's not small talk. It's confession disguised as conversation. It's their way of saying, I didn't know what I had when I had it. They don't admit regret directly. They don't say they miss you. They don't show the depth of their ache. But the act of reaching out is proof enough. Proof that the silence they once trusted has turned into punishment. Proof that the freedom they chased feels like a cage. Proof that the distance they demanded now feels unbearable. They don't expect you to come back. Deep down, they know too much time has passed. They know the damage can't be undone. But reaching out is their attempt to soothe the echo. To remind themselves that the connection wasn't just a dream. To feel, even for a moment, the presence they once rejected. By the time they reach this stage, something powerful has often happened. You've healed. You've grown. You've built peace without them. And nothing terrifies an avoidant more than seeing the person they took for granted become unreachable. Your strength becomes the mirror they can't escape. Your calm becomes the reminder of what they lost. Your growth becomes the punishment they never expected. They thought silence would protect them. Instead, silence exposed them. They thought distance would keep them safe. Instead, distance revealed the truth. They thought freedom would feel light. Instead, freedom feels heavy with regret. And now, when they finally try to return, they discover the door has closed. This stage isn't about reconciliation. It's about realization. Realization that they pushed away not the wrong person but the right one. Realization that the connection they dismissed was the very thing they needed. Realization that their patterns cost them something irreplaceable. So when the avoidant finally reaches out, understand this. The message isn't casual. It's a confession they'll never say out loud. It's proof that they break not when you leave but when you heal. And the deepest pain of all is knowing they waited too long. Because now, the silence they feared has become permanent. Avoidants don't break when you leave. They break when you heal. And the deepest pain of all is knowing they pushed away not the wrong person but the right one. If this hit you, if it made you see things clearer, don't just walk away, walk with me. Subscribe now because your growth deserves a voice that keeps reminding you of your strength.